Hi, welcome to this week's midweek warm-up. We are going to be going through Job chapters 36 and 37. It's a little bit longer tonight, the reading, so we'll try and
go fast.
Try and go quickly.
But it's smoky outside,
yeah.
So we may start coughing and or die.
He might start coughing. I probably will be fine.
I agree with that.
Anyhow, go ahead.
Okay, so where we were last time was Elihu going through and talking about what Job is doing wrong, which I've been talking about for months now. But he basically said, you're rebelling against God by not keeping God in your place, which God's place is in charge of everything. Mm-hmm. Which he really got pounded on again this week. So 36. Elihu also proceeded and said, bear with me a little, and I will show you that there are yet words to speak on God's behalf. I will fetch my knowledge from afar. I will ascribe righteousness to my Maker. For truly my words are not false. One who is perfect in knowledge is with you. Behold, God is mighty, but despises no one. He is mighty in strength of understanding. He does not preserve the life of the wicked, but gives justice to the oppressed. He does not withdraw his eyes from the righteous, but they are on the throne with kings, for he has seated them forever, and they are exalted. If they are bound in fetters, held in the cords of affliction, then he tells them their work and their transgressions, that they have acted defiantly. He also opens their ears to instruction and commands that they turn from iniquity. If they obey and serve him, they shall spend their days in prosperity, and their years in pleasures. But if they do not obey, they shall perish by the sword, and they shall die without knowledge. But the hypocrites in heart store up wrath, for they do not cry for help when he binds them. They die in youth, and their life ends among perverted persons. He delivers the poor in their affliction, opens their ears in oppression. Indeed, he would have brought you out of dire distress into a broad place where there is no restraint, and would have said your table would be full of richness. But you are filled with the judgment due the wicked. Judgment and justice take hold of you. Because there is wrath, beware, lest he take you away with one blow. For a large ransom would not help you avoid it. Will your riches or all the mighty forces keep you from distress? Do not desire the night when people are cut off in their place. Take heed, do not turn to iniquity, for you have chosen this rather than affliction. Behold, God is exalted by his power. Who teaches like him? Who has assigned him his way, or who has said, you have done wrong? Remember to magnify his work, of which men have sung. Everyone has seen it. Man looks on from afar. Behold, God is great, and we do not know him, nor can the number of his years be discovered. For he draws drops of water, which distills rain from the mist, which the clouds drop down and pour abundantly on man. Indeed, can anyone understand the spreading of clouds, the thunder from his canopy? Look, he scatters his light upon it and covers the depths of the sea. For by these he judges the peoples. He gives food in abundance. He covers his hands with lightning, commands it to strike. His thunder declares it, the cattle also concerning the rising storm. At this also my heart trembles and leaps from its place. Hear attentively the thunder of his voice and the rumbling that comes from his mouth. He sends it forth under the whole heaven, his lightning to the ends of the earth. After it a voice roars, he thunders with his majestic voice, and he does not restrain them when his voice is heard. God thunders marvelously with his voice. He does great things which we cannot comprehend. For he says to the snow, fall on the earth, likewise the gentle rain, the heavy rain of his strength. He seals the hand of every man, that all men may know his work. The beasts go into dens and remain in their lairs. From the chamber of the south comes a whirlwind, and cold from the scattering winds of the north. By the breath of God ice is given, and the broad waters are frozen. Also with moisture he saturates the thick clouds. He scatters his bright clouds, and they swirl about, being turned by his guidance, that they may do whatever he commands them on the face of the whole earth. He causes it to come, whether for correction or for his hand, or for mercy. Listen to this, O Job. Stand still and consider the wondrous works of God. Do you know when God dispatches them and causes the light of his cloud to shine? Do you know how the clouds are balanced, those wondrous works of him who is perfect in knowledge? Why are your garments hot when he quiets the earth by the south wind? With him have you spread out the skies, strong as a cast metal mirror? Teach us what we should say to him, for we can prepare nothing because of the darkness. Should he be told that I wish to speak? If a man were to speak, surely he would be swallowed up. Even now men cannot look at the light when it is bright in the skies, when the wind has passed and cleared them. He comes from the north as golden splendor, with God his awesome majesty. As for the Almighty, we cannot find him. He is excellent in power, in judgment and abundant justice. He does not oppress. Therefore men fear him. He shows no partiality to any who are wise of heart.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of talking right at once.
Yes.
But it should be very obvious as to why I had to do 37 and 36, because the entirety of 37 is built off the last few verses of 36. So.
Yeah.
Strange place to break the subject, but
yeah,
that's how chapters work sometimes.
There was something about verse 18 in 36:18. It says, "Because there is wrath, beware lest he take you away with one blow, for a large ransom would not help you avoid it." It just struck me that Elihu is very clearly and ardently trying to express God is so much bigger than you're allowing him to be in your brain. Like,
he's bigger than the boogeyman.
Yes, God could, if he so chose, cause those things to happen to him. But if God was done with him, God would have just ended him. I think that the concept is God, Elihu's trying to express, I think, that Job is somewhat blaming God for what's happened, and clearly to Elihu, like, God wouldn't have done that. If he was mad, if you had done something so heinous, you probably would have just died, because he doesn't just let people, I don't know.
Heinous is a fun word.
Yeah. I don't know.
That's your special word for the week. Heinous. You should use it regularly. Yes, that's exactly what Elihu was saying in the earlier chapters is, you're rebelling against God. This is what God is doing. This is what you're failing in.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why you're in the situation where God's not telling you, because you're not really listening. It's not even so much God's not talking, it's you're not listening for the answer because you're so stuck on how righteous you are. And your righteousness means nothing. And that's really what he's going on here. Like in verse 3, it says, "I will fetch my knowledge from afar, and I will ascribe righteousness to my Maker." He's saying that he's getting his answers from God. He's not getting them from himself. And so it's very important to look at that and take that in consideration with what Job's been saying, because Job's told his friends, I'm the righteous one. I'm doing things right. You guys are idiots.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't provide any evidence as to why or to where his righteousness was coming from that he's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
His was basically saying, I'm just the best there is. You can't stand up to me. And God says, no. He actually says no in the next chapter. But here in verse 5 in chapter 36, it starts with, "Behold, God is mighty, but despises no one." So there are several times that Job went through and said, God's doing this to me. God doesn't like me anymore. I must be in a position where God's angry for some reason.
He must have made him really mad.
Well, I think he might even be going into a little bit of thinking that God's jealous of him. And that's why God's mad at him, because he's righteous on his own, he says. And so, if he's that righteous, then why would God have anything to do against him? But if God's doing something against him, maybe God's jealous, is what he's saying. Could be. It's not a logical argument that Job's trying to make.
No.
He's just trying to justify himself so much that he's not looking at what God is saying.
Mm-hmm.
And so Elihu here is saying, basically, God's good. He takes care of bad people and takes care of the good people too. And it's not he takes care of them and gives the bad people lots of good stuff. It's bye-bye, bad people. Which essentially is what Job's friends were saying earlier, is bad people get what's coming to them and they're going to die. Which, yeah, they're going to. Doesn't mean they're going to immediately. Doesn't mean they get what's coming to them immediately either. Because what it's talking about here is not you do something bad, you get punished immediately. It's saying that over time, that's why it says they shall spend their days and their years. He's saying that in the long run, they're going to get what's coming to them.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it's immediate. But in verse 13 it says, "But the hypocrites in heart store up wrath, and they don't cry for help when he binds them." So he's basically saying they're so arrogant and full of themselves that they're not willing to ask God for help. And that's where a lot of people are, is that they're so convinced that they're either right or so convinced that they're in charge that they're not willing to ask God for help.
I think sometimes there's an element of feeling unworthy of his help. Like, my problem's not important enough, my problem's not as urgent, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to distract God with what I have going on. Which
Yes.
is silly, because you can't distract him.
Yeah, but I think that applies more to Christians specifically than people as a whole.
Okay.
Because most Christians are going to have the understanding that God's big, mighty, controlling. Not controlling because he's telling us what to do, but because he's in control of everything, literally.
Yeah.
But most non-Christians, especially in the world, a Western U.S. world type, not Europe, not Asia Minor, not Africa. In our society today, it's we don't need God because we have done blah, 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 whatever it is.
Yeah, because I can do the work myself. I can pull myself up by my bootstraps
And have a plane fly overhead.
and make it happen.
Although I was going to say that exact thing when you started saying it. 'Cause that is the American mindset. It's not look to God for help. It's he who helps himself gets helped. And that's not accurate.
No, that's not.
I mean, there is a kernel of truth there because God's not going to help you if you're not willing to do something. But
if he's asking you to do something, there's an expectation of you to do it. And it's not that God says, if you do this thing, I'll bless you with this. But when we submit to God, our relationship grows stronger, and then things that we desire that are in line with that relationship, he provides. And therefore is taking care of our needs.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
But that goes in line with also God not giving stuff to lazy people. If they're lazy, they're not willing to do what God's called them to do. So there you go. But I want to look at 14 here specifically for a moment, because 14 has a funny word in it. So in the New King James it says, they die in youth and their life ends among the perverted persons. So that just sounds kind of weird, and you might be thinking, okay, what's a perverted person? Isn't that what you're thinking, Emily?
Something like that.
Yes, what is a perverted person?
Well, obviously in our culture, we generally think that that's talking about sexual immorality, perversion. But perversion is just a dirtying of something that was otherwise clean. Perversion is twisting the truth, twisting the purpose of a thing.
Yes, that would definitely be accurate in most cases. However, this one's one of those weird ones where technically it's an accurate translation with what it is, but we apply it much more broadly based on the New Testament. So in Hebrew it's kadeshim, and it literally means someone who practiced sodomy or ritual prostitution. So.
Okay, so I was reading Hosea earlier today.
Yes, there's prostitute in there too.
There is, and God specifically is talking to Hosea about Israel and Judah, and how Israel is playing the harlot, and like, I don't know, the whole ritual prostitution and all of that was very prevalent at the time.
Yes, from Baal worship.
Mm-hmm.
But the whole sodomy part, if you can't figure that one out, I'm not going to say it, right?
You.
It's limited to one gender here. Let's do it that way. There are two. That might get us in trouble. Oh.
Anyway.
Too bad. Okay, so it says that these people die young, and then they deliver the poor in their affliction, open their ears in oppression. So all that fun stuff is saying hypocrites are bad because they bring it on themselves, basically. It's the way it works. If you do bad things happen to you.
So, I know in my brain that automatically brings up this concept of karma that I feel like we've talked about somewhat.
That's because it's based off the book of
It's
Job.
based off of this. Yeah, that's what I thought. The concept is I put good out, so good will come back to me. And that is what kind of confuses a lot of people when they hold to that mentality and that thought process so strongly that, like, if I do something good for someone else, then something good is going to happen to me. So your motivation now has gone from caring for someone else to trying to get brownie points and get your way and get something special or get something,
Cha-ching.
yeah, for yourself. So, like in Hosea, where God says, I desire mercy, not sacrifice. He doesn't want the
action. He wants the heart to change.
He wants the heart to change. He wants our hearts, not just our words, not just our time.
Yeah, that's exactly what the next part here is talking about, from 16 to 21. It's talking about all of your stuff can't buy you goodness or forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going through and basically saying, yeah, you were the best of the best of the best with honor, sir, but it doesn't mean anything. God took it away just like that. And there's nothing you could have done to stop it. Even though you think you're amazing, even though you think you're wonderful, even though you think you're righteous, you're really nothing compared to God.
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes on to say, behold, God is exalted by his power. Who teaches like him? And basically it says, who can tell God what to do? And the answer is, right after it says, nope, men can't do it. It's not possible.
Yeah.
And that's really where it is we can't attempt to fathom what it is that God does, much less tell God what to do. I mean, people still try to, but it doesn't do any good. And then it goes in from 26 on through the rest of this chapter, going to the next one about the storm. And so you can't see them right now here too much. You can't live it that way, but it's very cloudy outside right now. But it's smoke. It's not real clouds so much right now.
Mm-hmm.
But when there are lots of clouds out here, it's like it talks about here where it says, for he draws up or drops of water, which distills rain from the mist, which clouds drop down and pour abundantly on man. I mean, have you ever seen it rain without clouds? I mean, it's possible, but it's because the clouds are up so high we can't see them.
Or because it's there's not, the way the science works,
they can run out of water.
They can run out of water, or the water doesn't have enough particles to cling to and accumulate. So it had evaporated, but it
condenses on the way down.
Yeah.
Science class.
Yeah.
Okay, so the general idea, though, is that if there's not a lot of clouds, it's not going to rain. And God is the one that controls all the clouds.
Mm-hmm.
And by God controlling all these clouds and the water cycle and everything, he's the one that provides food. He's the one that provides shelter and shade and Emily falling asleep and other stuff like that. But the other side of that is that God is in control of the thunder.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you've ever seen the rundown, you little thunder, little light.
See, and I was thinking of How Great Thou Art. Not.
My reference is better.
Let us know whose reference you like more, How Great Thou Art or the rundown.
Definitely the rundown.
Yeah.
Yep. It's like the one good movie that Sean William Scott's been in. Anyway, so we have thunder. And it says he sends it forth under the whole heaven, and his lightning to the ends of the earth. And after it a voice roars and thunders with a majestic voice. God makes himself known in everything on this planet. I mean, it's impossible to not see God in his creation. Now, it's not to say that we can't try and cover it up. We can't mess it up. And we can't do lots of stupid things.
Because we can and have. Because we're human.
You just have to watch the news to see how obvious that is.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't change the fact that God is in control of the snow. God is in control of the rain. And he's in charge of the animals and all the snow and the cold and the heat and the clouds and everything in existence. Now you can argue, yes, there's a water cycle and there's physics and everything is governed by rules, but who wrote the rules?
Well, that's the thing. I think that we as humans, we get arrogant about it because we're like, well, we know science and we know the rules, the laws of, thermodynamics and the laws of physics and all of these things that are really just our attempts at understanding and quantifying
what God has done,
what God has made and how he made it to function. It's not the other way around. It's not that science rules and everything else must fit within what science says. It's science exists for us to understand God's creation better.
Yes, science is made for us to try and quantify what God has already done, and we've seen around us every day of our lives.
Same with math. Mathematics is...
The golden ratio is in every flower in existence.
Yes.
And hummingbird wings.
It's also
and bees' flight patterns.
Called the Fibonacci spiral or the Fibonacci's code.
That's mathematician speak for it's
yes.
Italian.
It's what gives the shell of a snail or a seashell this specific curve and the ratio and proportion of how that curves. And it's the same ratio, the same numbers that, like you said, help make up the way that the petals of a flower grow, or even just, I don't know, there's something else and I just lost it.
Or the area that a cylinder takes up.
Yeah.
Or the ratio of the sides of the pyramids.
Yeah. Anyway, it just...
Or how to fly fish. You can forget that one.
It's fascinating. It's funny, there are some people, I know this is totally off topic, I'm sorry. There are just some people that think as Christians we must just close our eyes and hide ourselves from science. That's not the case. Science confirms the Bible when we let it be what science is supposed to be, which is...
Well, if you look at the Reformation, the purpose of science is to show how great God is. It's not to disprove God. It's not to prove that we can do things on our own. All the great mathematicians in history did math to show how great God was.
Yeah, to say, oh my goodness, look, I found this pattern. Look, I found this... Sorry, airplanes.
Look, more examples of God's greatness.
Well, even...
We can't see it, but you can hear it probably.
Yeah. It just... Yeah, sorry, that's completely off topic.
Bernoulli's principle, which God wrote too.
Yes. Again, all of those things, no matter what human's name we put on it, that's just our attempts at describing something God has already put in place, that we can see the pattern, we can see the thumbprint of God on it, but we are trying to understand it and be able to explain how our minds perceive how it functions and what limits it has and what boundaries it has and what effect those have on other things. So,
yes.
That's my science spiel.
Yes, it was.
Sorry.
That's fine. That's what we're here for. But going on here, in 14 it says, "Listen to this, O Job. Stand still and consider the wondrous works of God." So he's just gone through and said all these things that God does, and with storms and clouds. And then to drive it back in again, he says, "Do you know when God dispatches them and causes the light of his cloud to shine? Do you know how the clouds are balanced? Those wondrous works of him who is perfect in knowledge." I mean, can you make a cloud?
I can make a cloud in a bottle.
But that's not really a cloud.
It is a cloud, but it's also not me creating it out of nothing. It's me understanding some of the principles behind how it forms and creating the
That's sticking a match in
circumstances for that to happen. So you increase pressure, and then when you let go, you're lowering the pressure, which allows the moisture, the water, to form a cloud on the particles of smoke.
God does without smoke. And across the entire world simultaneously.
Yeah, like I said, it's not me making it. I understand the principles that we've discovered about how it functions and how it forms, and we can create the circumstances for that to occur. We can't sustain it, though. We can't create a cloud in a bottle and just let it sit there and go, oh, look, I have a cloud.
We have to
because
let go.
It dissipates.
And then smoke goes away, and it goes away.
Yeah, it doesn't work always. So...
Well, that's what it's saying is, do you know how it works? Can you do these things? In verse 18 it says, with him have you spread out the skies strong as a cast metal mirror. So, is there anyone in existence that can say they made the sky?
No. Well,
Nope.
God.
No, but is there a person that can say that?
No.
If we can't do that, then how can we justify saying that we're better than God?
Yeah.
Or is capable, or anything? Because the sky is big, but it's nowhere close to as big as what God's done.
Yeah.
Because we know there's a whole universe out there that's billions of times bigger than just our sky.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that there's aliens or anything else out there, but there are lots of stars and planets out there that we know of.
Yeah.
And we can't get to them. But God made them there.
It's funny because we think that those things exist for us to try and get to, but I think there's a large portion of it that they exist for us to enjoy seeing them from here. And the concept of exploration and discovery, I think,
Star Trek.
it's
Star Trek.
It's just something that as humans we have this inherent curiosity.
It's like the Bible tells us to do that back in Genesis.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it says to take dominion over the land. That's called exploration.
Okay.
Okay, so the last little section here in this chapter talks, and in 21 says, even now men cannot look at the light when it is bright in the skies, when the wind has passed and cleared them. So the them there is talking about clouds, because we can't look at the sun. It hurts our eyes. And if we're dumb and we do it for a long time, it'll make us go blind.
Mm-hmm.
Which I've tried to look at the sun for a long time. It makes a big spot up here in your eyes you can't see for a while. Which is why we use little filters to do it now for eclipses.
Mm-hmm.
But God made that.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can't even look at it, then how can we say that we're as big as God?
Yeah.
And that's really what this entire section has been, is Elihu saying, you're not God. You're not as good as God. You're not as big as God. You never will be as big as God. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
And so he finally ends it with saying, as for the Almighty, we cannot find him. He is excellent in power, in judgment and abundant justice. He does not oppress. Therefore men fear him, and he shows no partiality to any who are wise of heart. It's not saying we can't find God because God's not there. It's saying we cannot find God by looking in and of ourselves if God doesn't want to be found. God is always present and wants us to be in relationship with him. But we can't find out where he is. He's not in a physical location for us to go to and say, oh, look, I found it. There's no X marking the spot.
Yeah.
Okay, you had a comment. Maybe just pretty.
Oh.
Definitely.
I'm kind of quasi watching the sunset.
There is no sunset. It's gone.
Anyway.
So in judgment and abundant justice. So he's saying everything's being done right because God can't do it wrong. Mm-hmm. Basically. And nothing God does is oppressive. It may seem oppressive to you, but that's probably because you're doing something wrong. In which case, it should be oppressive because you're wrong. But the answer here that Elihu is giving is that if you do things right, there's nothing to go against you.
Mm-hmm.
That's what verse 24 says, is he shows no partiality to any who are wise of heart. So it's not saying those who speak eloquently, not those who have lots of money. It's those who are wise, and to be wise, like the Bible says, is to seek God.
Yeah.
And so Job proved himself to not be wise because he wasn't seeking God at this point.
Mm-hmm.
He was just trying to prove himself, which it says in Proverbs that even a fool can seem wise until he opens his mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And Job opened his mouth a lot. He started out really good and then faltered and kind of biffed it bad at the end.
Yeah. Well, I think, again, Job lost sight because he got defensive. Because he, instead of, like, they stopped saying, like, they weren't saying it was God's fault. They were saying, you deserve this because God can't be wrong. And Job's like, no, God can't be wrong, but I don't deserve this. And so he got defensive, and instead of it being both things are true at once, it was self-defense arguments as much as he could come up with, because yeah, he is innocent of the things that they claim.
Yes.
But
Job's entire defense switched from being focused on God to focused on him.
mm-hmm.
And there was no reason for him to defend himself because, as he said, he was innocent of those things.
Yeah.
So why did he switch? And like Emily said, it's because he got defensive. We don't need to be
mm-hmm.
defensive. When people are mad at the gospel, they're mad at God, not at us.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus said, when they persecute you, it's because they're persecuting me.
Yeah.
So if people get mad at this video, it's because they're persecuting God, not me. I'm just saying it.
Well, depending on what they're mad at.
They're mad at the comments about genders and the fact that God's in control.
And God doesn't make mistakes. That's something that's been huge to me recently. Just remembering God does not make mistakes. He does not accidentally put us in the wrong body. He does not accidentally give us the wrong color hair or accidentally make us
the wrong gender.
How he did with our personalities and all of that.
Freckles.
He made us exactly intentionally how he wanted us to be, and the world wants to twist that and
be a pirate.
I think a lot of it just has to do with, first we want to tear down families, and then we want to tear down, this is just generically the world, the enemy wants to do this, and then wants to tear down individual value based on the fact that we were created in the image of God, and he loves us inherently and adamantly, and that love never changes.
And you can't get to heaven without him.
Exactly. Even those who go and say, I don't believe in God. I had this conversation at camp with an adult that I said in one of the things that God loves everyone, but he does not love sin. God loved Pharaoh to the extent that he still made Pharaoh and gave Pharaoh the opportunity to see him and know him. He knew that Pharaoh would not choose him, and he hardened his heart because he had already chosen against God.
He loved Satan and the demons, knowing that they were going to be his adversaries.
Knowing that they would become his adversaries, knowing that, and again, that was another conversation with people at camp, that knowing that we were going to sin, that Adam and Eve were going to sin, that we were all going to screw it up and hurt God and hurt each other and try and do our best to ruin things, God still made us.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody was asking, why would God do that? Why would he still make us if he knew we were going to sin?
Because God is love.
Because he loves us.
And God values us more than the pain we cause.
Yes. And that
like
there is, and I don't see how you could not rejoice in that. I don't know. It's awesome. So, anyway.
It's getting dark. And Emily keeps talking about things that are weird.
I'm sorry.
Like sunsets.
I keep looking over at the sunset. Anyway.
I thought she was looking at me.
A little. Anyway.
Anything else you'd like to cover before we pray?
No.
Okay, we'll go ahead and pray so that we can get done today. Dear Lord in heaven, we thank you for this day and thank you for your word. We thank you for you giving us all the wisdom and understanding that's present in this book, and just thank you that with you it comes alive. We thank you for you being not just some impersonal God who created things and then just stepped aside, but you are actively involved in it each and every day. Just thank you for your son coming and dying on the cross for us, and that you loved us enough that you wanted us to be with you for all eternity. Just ask that you be with all the people that need you. Just draw them to you and help them to understand and just seek after you and come to knowledge of you and get to go to heaven through that. We thank you for everything you've done. Just thank you that you're great and mighty. In your wonderful name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Okay.
Yeah.
You want to stop it? No, wait.
I'm going to say bye yet. She's tired.
Thanks for joining us. Thanks for your patience. Thanks for your comments and your input. And thank you for praying for us and with us. And we'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Bye.
Bye.